We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
Welcome back. We're fortunate to have with us today acclaimed author and America's #1 syndicated columnist, Cal Thomas, to talk about his new book, A Watchman in the Night, and the sticky situation America finds itself in with a failing fourth estate. Cal Thomas, thanks for taking the time to join us. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Mark. Good to be with you.
Okay, let's start with the new book, Cal. So it's released on May the 8th, and it's called A Watchman in the Night, and it covers your reporting on essentially the biggest stories of the last half century, but it's literally all of them, which is quite a fascinating roundup. Now, it really captured, I think, the zeitgeist of the last half century and brought it all together. In many ways, it's quite overwhelming to realize just how much has happened in the last 50 years. What was the motivation behind writing this, Cal?
Well, I thought as I approached the 40th year of my syndicated column, it would be interesting to look back and see what had changed and what had not changed. And the one thing that had not changed was human nature. You can change parties, you can change clothes and hairstyles, modes of transportation, but human nature never changes. And the remarkable thing is that how some of these political arguments never change. We're still arguing over spending and the national debt. And as you mentioned, the media. So many of these things have been going on for so long. The real problem is that people will not confront solutions because to actually solve a problem for the politicians means they no longer have the issue, and they'd rather have the issue than the solution, which is really discouraging. We have a $31.4 trillion debt. The interest on the debt is greater than the GDP of many nations, and nobody will cut anything. And no nation has ever been able to survive with this kind of debt. So I look back on these last 40 years as a column writer, and before that as a reporter, and it's not a column collection, but it is kind of a diary on the road to wherever we're headed, and conclude that not a whole lot has changed, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think the title of the book itself was a really great statement on that, wasn't it? Because it's almost as if you're inviting the reader to be a participant in your reporting. So I won't give any spoilers away because obviously it's about the last 50 years. But you have the key issues of the year laid out, and then there's Cal's take on what happened, and there's some great anecdotes in there. Let me just go back to what you were saying about the title. It's taken from the Old Testament. The ancient Israelites used to pose a watchman on the walls at night after the gates were shut to look out for invading armies or other bad people who might wish to do them harm. So without sounding too conceited, I kind of see myself as in their line, a watchman for the encroaching things, the wokeness, the LGBTQ+I crowd, the people who are undermining public education and university education in America, even Disney and so many other things. I assert that there is a standard. Now, if you go into a supermarket and you go to the checkout stand and you say, well, I have 2 jugs of milk here. Well, but I only want to be charged for 1. Because my standard is 2 gallons equals 1 gallon. The next voice you hear would be security. Yeah. Everybody has their own standard now. In the book of Judges, it says in those days, Israel had no king. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes. And that's danger for any culture or society. If you do not have a standard by which to judge right and wrong, good and bad, then anything goes, as the old Cole Porter song says. And in olden times, a glimpse of stocking, right?
That's right. Was looked on as something shocking. Now who knows? Anything goes, and that's one of our problems in America right now. People are afraid to speak up for traditional values, for right versus wrong. They can't even defend these things or define them because they're afraid of being called any number of phobes.
As you write in the book, well, to me it seems like there was almost a building crescendo. It was very. I'm sure you're familiar with We Didn't Start the Fire by Billy Joel, where he goes through all the years. And it almost felt like that
for me that there was something building there. And coming back to what you say about how people can't agree on objective values, that itself, though, that's not something new, is it? C.S. Lewis's, we talked about him just before we started recording, his Mere Christianity, the whole first part of that is making the case that there is such a thing as good and bad, obviously being the opposite of what is good, that needs must be agreed upon and exists outside of any definition that can attach it to itself. I think I've explained that badly, but it's a very C.S. Lewis argument.
Well, as not to get too preachy here, but I think a prime example of this is when Jesus stood before Pontius Pilate, and Pilate asked rhetorically, "What is truth?" That's where we are today. You have your truth, I have my truth. Even if they are contradictory, as long as each of our truths makes us feel good, it's okay. The late Bishop Fulton J. Sheen, Catholic bishop, used to say America is not overrun by the intolerant or the bigoted. We're overrun by the tolerant. We tolerate everything now, and including debt, including any kind of human relationship. There's a town in Massachusetts which recently passed through their city council a provision allowing polyamorous relationships. So you can have 3 or more wives, husbands, binaries, or whatever, and still be considered a legitimate family, presumably for tax purposes. Not a bad idea if you need more deductions, but in terms of societal...
Everybody needs deductions.
In terms of societal cohesion, it's a train wreck.
Well, yeah, I guess you're right on that, Cal. I mean, it's all well and good for the individual, but it's not looking at the individual moving forward into the future, as in becoming a parent. How does that work? How is there going to be any stability when a polyamorous relationship of 5, 6, or however many people splits up? Where does how does that work for the next generation? It works in a very, I don't want to be judgmentalist, but it works in a very hedonistic manner, as in you're doing this for yourself and not for you're not laying seeds for the next generation, as it were. Now, right. Cal, let's talk very briefly about the fourth estate. We'll talk more about the media later on in the show, but it seems to me, and this is something that your book really brought home to me, is that the fourth estate has generally lost the historical perspective on national and global events. As in, we're invited to only consider the present and very, very recent past, and only in a way that benefits the favored political party of the day. And there are some exceptions, of course. There's yourself, there's Victor David Hanson, who does some great work. But why do you think that so much of the legacy media opts for this, let's call it like a staccato approach rather than the richer tabloid, which I guess you try to present in your book, try successfully?
Thank you. Well, they share a similar worldview. They read each other's stuff. They go to social events where they only see each other. I had a columnist who I've known for some time in the New York Times call me a couple of years ago about something, and he said at the end, "By the way, are you still writing your column?" I felt like saying, "Yeah, are you still writing yours?" I mean, this proves my point. Yeah. They only read each other's stuff, and it's reinforcement. Now, some people on the right do that as well. They tune in only to those cable channels, or they read only those articles that reinforce what they already believe. That's not growth. You ought to read what the other side thinks, just for your ability to countermand it, if you will. But the polls show, the latest Gallup poll shows that trust in the American media is at an all-time low, down around the level of Congress. I don't know of any other industry that disrespects its potential consumers or actual consumers more than the media. They never respond to these polls. They never ask, well, what could we do to get more readers or more viewers? They don't care. They're insular. They shut out everybody who doesn't agree with them, and they only accept interns or young journalists who share their worldview. If you have another worldview, you're not going to get hired, or you're going to get ostracized if you manage to get in the door. The First Amendment is great, but if you can't afford a printing press, it doesn't do you a whole lot of good.
So very true, very true. We're going to be back with Cal after this short break. And I just want to remind our listeners that A Watchman in the Night is out on May the 8th. And we'll be back after this short break. Don't go anywhere. We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides. Entertaining, informative, and just plain fun. Watch Liberty Nation's The Conservative 5. Produced by conservatives for conservatives. C5's The Left Free Zone. Hosted by Liberty Nation's Lisa K. Donner. Joined by a raucous, irreverent panel of authors. Deconstructing leftist narratives. Debating the hot topics. And remembering to laugh. Join the official conservative safe space.
You only did that to piss Jeff off.
Liberty Nation's The Conservative 5.